Dr. Elena Rodriguez pressed her face closer to the monitor screen. The numbers dancing across the display made no sense at all. She had been studying deep space signals for 15 years, but nothing like this had ever appeared on her instruments. Jake, come look at this, she called to her research partner across the small laboratory aboard the ship Aurora. The vessel drifted silently through space near the edge of the Kepler system, far from any known planets or space stations. Captain. Jake Morrison pushed himself away from his own workstation and floated over to Elena's position. In the low gravity of the research ship, everyone moved with careful, practiced motions to avoid bumping into the sensitive equipment that filled every corner of the cramped space. What do you have? Jake asked, settling into the chair next to Elena, his brown eyes focused on the screen, trying to make sense of the strange patterns of light and energy that pulsed across the display. Energy readings from Sector 77 Alpha, Elena replied, pointing at a cluster of bright spots on the screen. But look at these power levels, they're off the charts. Whatever is out there is producing more energy than a small star. Jake frowned as he studied the data. The Aurora had been sent to this remote part of space to study cosmic background radiation, boring work that usually involved cataloging tiny variations in the energy left over from the universe's birth. Finding active energy sources this far from civilization was like discovering a city in the middle of an empty desert. Could be a pulsar, Jake suggested, though his voice carried doubt. Or maybe some kind of natural phenomenon we haven't seen before. Elena shook her head. Look at the pattern. It's too regular, too organized. This isn't random cosmic noise. Something is generating these signals on purpose. On her screen, the energy readings showed a complex rhythm that repeated every few minutes. The pattern had structure, almost like a code or language that they couldn't understand. Elena had run the signals through every analysis program in the ship's computer, but nothing could decode what they were seeing. 3,000 light-years away, on the planet Zerium Prime, alarms began sounding in the great crystal towers that housed the Zephyrian government. High Counselor Vextar rose from his meditation platform as urgent messages flowed through the communication crystals embedded in the walls around him. The Zephyrians looked nothing like humans. Their bodies were tall and thin, covered in scales that shifted color with their emotions. They had 4 arms and large, dark eyes that could see far into the infrared spectrum. But despite their alien appearance, fear showed on Vextar's face just as clearly as it would on any human. The ancient sensors have awakened, reported Commander Salenth, her scales flickering between deep blue and worried purple. All monitoring stations across the sector are detecting the activation signals. Vextar felt his own scales shift too, the pale gray of deep concern. For over 3,000 years, the ancient sensors had remained silent. According to the oldest records in the Zephyrian archives, the sensors had been built by the mysterious beings known only as the Ancients, godlike creatures who had ruled the galaxy in the distant past before vanishing without explanation. Are you certain? Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. The ancient technology was impossible to mistake. When it activated, every species in the galaxy could detect its unique energy signature. There is no doubt, High Counselor. The patterns match exactly with the historical records. The ancients have returned. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on dozens of worlds. The crystalline hegemony, beings made of living rock and metal, felt the vibrations through their planet-wide consciousness. The Void Collective, creatures of pure energy who lived between the stars, sensed the awakening through dimensions that physical beings couldn't perceive. Every advanced species in the galaxy knew the stories of the ancients, and every one of them felt the same cold fear when the sensors began their ancient song back aboard the Aurora. Elena and Jake worked frantically to analyze the strange signals. Chief Engineer Lisa Park joined them, bringing coffee and her expertise with the ship's sensor array. I've boosted the gain on all our receivers, Lisa reported, her red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Whatever is out there, it's big. Really big. The energy source has to be at least the size of a space station, maybe larger. Dr. Sam Tucker, the team's xenobiologist, floated into the laboratory carrying a tablet full of data. His job was to study potential alien life, but so far in their 3-year mission, they had found nothing but empty space and lifeless rocks. "I've been analyzing the signal structure," Sam said, his voice excited despite the mystery they faced. "There are patterns within patterns, like nested codes. This isn't just random energy output. Someone or something is trying to communicate." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had been exploring space for over 200 years, but they had never found any sign of intelligent alien life. The discovery of such signals would change everything about how humans saw their place in the universe. "We need to investigate," Jake decided. "This could be the most important discovery in human history." Elena nodded, but worry gnawed at her. Thoughts, the energy readings were unlike anything in their databases. Whatever had built the source of these signals possessed technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved. She couldn't shake the feeling that they might be about to make contact with something much more powerful than they were prepared to handle, Lisa began, plotting a course toward the energy source. The Aurora wasn't a fast ship built for scientific research rather than speed, but it could make the journey to the signal's origin in about 6 hours. As the ship's engines came to life, Elena watched the signal strength grow stronger on her monitors. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the greatest military forces ever assembled began to move. The Zephyrian Empire activated its war fleets, pulling ships from peaceful patrol duties and arming them with the most powerful weapons in their arsenal. The crystalline hegemony's living ships began growing new weapons and armor, their rocky surfaces sprouting cannons and shield generators. The Void Collective gathered its energy beings into vast swarms that could move faster than light itself. All of these preparations were based on stories passed down through countless generations. The legend spoke of the ancients as beings of terrible power who could reshape matter with their thoughts, travel between stars in the blink of an eye, and command technologies that seemed like magic to lesser species. According to the stories, the ancients had ruled the galaxy with absolute authority, before mysteriously disappearing during an event the historians called the Great Silence. Now, after 3,000 years of peace, the ancient censors were active again. Every species in the galaxy interpreted this the same way. The godlike ancients had returned to reclaim their empire. As the Aurora moved closer to the source of the mysterious signals, Elena continued her analysis of the energy patterns. Something about them seemed familiar, though she couldn't explain why. The mathematical relationships reminded her of principles she had learned in school, and the signal timing matched patterns that felt almost natural to her human mind. "Jake," she said quietly, "what if these aren't alien signals at all? What do you mean?" Jake asked, looking up from his navigation calculations. "The patterns, the mathematics, even the way the energy is structured. What if whoever built this technology thinks the same way we do?" Before Jake could answer, Lisa's voice came over the ship's communication system. "Everyone to the observation deck. You need to see this." Elena and Jake rushed to join Lisa and Sam at the ship's main viewing port. Ahead of them, growing larger, as they approached, was a structure unlike anything any human had ever seen. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, a complex maze of corridors and chambers that gleamed with its own internal light. The architecture was strange, but somehow familiar, following design principles that human eyes could understand and appreciate. "My God," Sam whispered. "It's beautiful." Elena stared at the ancient structure and felt a strange sense of recognition, as if she were looking at something she had seen before in dreams. Neither she nor any of her companions had any idea that they were about to discover the truth behind the galaxy's greatest mystery, or that the beings every alien species feared, as the ancients were much closer to home than anyone could have imagined. Captain Jake Morrison guided the Aurora carefully toward the massive space station that floated before them. The structure was enormous, easily 10 times larger than the biggest human space station he had ever seen. Its surface was covered in smooth metal that seemed to glow with its own soft blue light, and strange symbols were carved into every visible surface. "Lisa, are you getting any response to our communication attempts?" Jake asked into his headset. Chief Engineer Lisa Park worked frantically at her control panel, sending radio signals, light pulses, and mathematical sequences toward the alien structure. Nothing yet, Captain. But the station is definitely active? Power readings are through the roof, and I'm detecting movement inside some of those corridors. Dr. Elena Rodriguez floated next to the main viewing window, her eyes fixed on the alien symbols that covered the station's hull. Something about them nagged at her mind, like a word she almost remembered but couldn't quite recall. The shapes were flowing and graceful, but they followed patterns that seemed oddly logical to her human eyes. "Sam, what do you think about those markings?" she asked Dr. Sam Tucker, who was recording everything with the ship's cameras. Sam adjusted his glasses and studied the symbols through a telescope. "They're definitely writing of some kind. See how they repeat in certain patterns. And look at those mathematical symbols along the bottom edge. They're using base 10 counting just like we do." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Base 10 mathematics meant whoever built this station had 10 fingers, just like humans. But that was impossible. Humans had never been in this part of space before, and they certainly didn't have the technology to build something like this massive station, 300 light-years away. The Zephyrian war fleet moved through space at maximum speed. Admiral Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, watching as more and more ships joined his formation. In the past 6 hours, every available Zephyrian vessel had been called to active duty. "Status report, Admiral." Kethver commanded, his forearms working different control panels at once. 237 ships now in formation, Admiral," reported his communications officer. "The Crystalline Hegemony has sent their own fleet, and the Void Collective has promised support. All species are responding to the ancient awakening." The Admiral's scales shifted to the deep red of determination mixed with fear. Like every Zephyrian, he had grown up hearing stories about the ancients. They were described as tall beings with pale skin and hair that came in many colors. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs, but they possessed technology that could do impossible things, according to the oldest records. The ancients had appeared in Zephyrian space over 15,000 years ago. They had taught early Zephyrian civilization how to grow better crops, how to build stronger shelters, and how to work with metals. But they had also demonstrated weapons that could level mountains, and ships that could cross between stars faster than light itself. "How long until we reach the source of the ancient signals?" the Admiral asked. 18 hours at current speed, sir." 18 hours to prepare for a confrontation with beings whose power had become legend across the galaxy. Admiral Kethver only hoped his fleet would be enough to protect Zephyrian space if the ancients had returned as conquerors back at the mysterious station. The human team made their first breakthrough. Lisa discovered that the station was responding to their radio signals even though it wasn't sending any messages back. Every time they transmitted, certain sections of the station would glow brighter, as if their signals were activating systems that had been dormant for a very long time. "It's like the station is waking up," Lisa reported. "Our signals are triggering automatic responses throughout the structure." Dr. Elena Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything. "Jake, I want to go aboard that station." "Absolutely not," Jake replied immediately. "We have no idea what's inside there. It could be dangerous." "But it could also be the greatest discovery in human history," Elena argued. "Look at it, Jake. This technology is thousands of years ahead of ours, but it's responding to our signals." "That has to mean something," Sam supported Elena's idea. "She's right. Whoever built this station used the same mathematical principles we do. They might think more like us than we realize." Jake looked out at the alien structure and felt the weight of command on his shoulders. He was responsible for the safety of his crew, but he was also a scientist and explorer. The opportunity to study alien technology this advanced might never come again. "All right," he decided. "But we go together and we take every precaution possible." 2 hours later, Elena, Jake, and Sam floated through the airlock connecting their shuttle to the alien station. They wore full environmental suits and carried emergency oxygen supplies, not knowing what kind of atmosphere they might find inside. The moment they entered the station, lights began turning on around them. The corridors were filled with a soft, warm glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. The air was thin but breathable, with an oxygen content similar to Earth's atmosphere. "This is incredible," Sam whispered into his radio. "The station knows we're here. It's providing light and adjusting the atmosphere for us." Elena walked slowly down the main corridor, studying the symbols that covered every surface. Up close, she could see that they weren't just random decorations. They were instructions, diagrams, and what looked like historical records. Some of the symbols showed star charts, others depicted complex mathematical equations. "Jake, look at this," she called, pointing to a section of wall covered in symbols that looked almost familiar. Jake joined her and studied the markings. They look like evolution diagrams. See how they show simple life forms becoming more complex over time? Sam was examining another wall when he made a discovery that shocked all of them. "Elena, Jake, you need to see this right now." They rushed to join him at a large panel covered in symbols and pictures. Sam pointed to a series of images that showed the development of intelligent life. The pictures started with simple creatures, then showed them learning to use tools, discovering fire, and eventually building cities and spacecraft, but the beings in the pictures looked almost exactly like humans. "That's impossible," Jake said, staring at the images. "These pictures show human evolution, but this station is thousands of years old." Elena studied the images more carefully. The beings in the pictures had 2 arms, 2 legs, and faces that could have belonged to any human on Earth. They wore clothes similar to what humans might wear, and they used tools that human hands could easily operate. "What if it's not impossible?" Elena said quietly. "What if humans have been in space much longer than we thought?" Before anyone could respond to Elena's shocking suggestion, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors, and symbols on the walls began glowing. With urgent warnings, Lisa's voice crackled through their radio communicators. "Elena, Jake, Sam, you need to get back to the shuttle right now. I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching our position. Something big is coming, and it's moving fast." Jake grabbed Elena's arm. "We're leaving now." But Elena pulled away from him. "Wait, I found something." She was standing in front of what looked like a computer terminal, its screen filled with symbols and diagrams. "This looks like a data storage system. If I can figure out how to access it. Elena placed her gloved hand on what appeared to be a control panel. The moment she touched it, the entire station seemed to come alive. Lights blazed throughout the corridors, and a deep humming sound filled the air as systems that had been dormant for millennia suddenly activated. Unknown to the human team, their activation of the station's main computer sent a signal across the galaxy that was detected by every alien civilization within 1,000 light years. The signal matched perfectly with ancient records of how the ancients communicated with their technology on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance. Admiral Kethfer watched in horror as his sensors detected the ancient signal broadcasting across space. "All ships maximum speed. The ancients are not just returning, they're already here." The crystalline hegemony felt the signal as vibrations through their living rock ships. The Void Collective sensed it as disturbances in the energy fields between dimensions. Every species that had ever heard stories of the ancients recognized the signal for what it appeared to be, a declaration that the godlike beings had returned to reclaim their empire. Back on the station, Elena stared at the computer screen as streams of data began flowing across it. The symbols were changing, becoming simpler and more recognizable. It was as if the computer was learning to communicate with her, adapting its language to match her human understanding. "Elena, we have to go," Jake insisted, but Elena couldn't tear herself away from the screen. "Jake, this computer is talking to me. It's showing me star charts, technical diagrams, historical records. This isn't just alien technology. This is a library, a record of an entire civilization." Sam joined her at the terminal, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. The data storage capacity must be enormous. There could be thousands of years of history stored in this system. The Humming sound grew louder, and the lights throughout the station began pulsing in complex patterns. Dr. Sam Tucker sat hunched over his computer screen aboard the Aurora, his eyes red from hours of staring at the strange data they had downloaded from the ancient station. Coffee cups floated around him in the low gravity, forgotten as he worked through the night trying to decode what they had found. "Elena, you need to see this," Sam called across the laboratory, his voice tight with excitement and disbelief. Dr. Elena Rodriguez pushed away from her own workstation and floated over to join him. She had been analyzing the energy patterns from the station, but Sam's discovery looked far more important than anything she had found. "What did you discover?" Elena asked, settling into the chair next to Sam. Sam pointed at his screen, which showed rows of symbols that looked almost familiar. "Remember those symbols we saw on the station walls? I've been running them through every translation program we have, and I found something incredible." He pulled up a comparison chart that made Elena's breath catch in her throat. On one side were the alien symbols from the station. On the other side were examples of ancient human writing systems from Earth, Egyptian hieroglyphs, Sumerian cuneiform, and early Chinese characters. "Look at the patterns," Sam continued, his finger tracing connections between the symbols. "The mathematical relationships are identical. The way they represent numbers, the structure of their grammar, even the artistic style. These aren't alien symbols at all, Elena. They're human writing that evolved over thousands of years." Elena stared at the screen, feeling the world shift around her. "That's impossible. Humans have only been in space for 200 years. This station is at least 15,000 years old." "That's what I thought too," Sam replied. "But look at this." He pulled up another screen showing carbon dating results from samples they had collected inside the station. The dates were consistent. 15,000 years old, give or take a few centuries. But mixed in with the ancient materials were traces of organic compounds that could only have come from Earth-based life forms. "Sam, are you saying that humans built this station 15,000 years ago?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer from his expression. "I'm saying that some humans left Earth long before recorded history and spread across the galaxy. The station, the technology, the symbols, it's all human, Elena. Ancient human, but human nonetheless." Captain Jake Morrison chose that moment to float into the laboratory, carrying urgent messages from Earth Command. "Elena, Sam, we've got a problem. Long-range sensors are detecting massive fleet movements throughout this sector. Every alien species within 1,000 light-years is mobilizing their military forces." Elena and Sam looked at each other with growing understanding. "Jake, we need to tell you what we've discovered," Elena said. "The station isn't alien technology." Jake listened in stunned silence as Elena and Sam explained their findings. The implications were staggering. If ancient humans had achieved interstellar travel 15,000 years ago, then humanity's place in the galaxy was completely different from what anyone had believed. "You're telling me that the beings every alien species calls the ancients, they're actually our ancestors?" Jake asked. "That's exactly what we're telling you," Sam confirmed. "And based on the fleet movements you mentioned, I think the aliens believe the ancients have returned." 300 light-years away, Admiral." Kethver stood on the bridge of his flagship as his war fleet approached the source of the ancient signals. His sensors showed a small human research vessel docked with one of the legendary ancient stations, and the sight filled him with confusion and dread. "Admiral, we're detecting 4 life forms aboard the ancient structure," reported his sensor. "Officer, they appear to be the same species as the beings operating the smaller vessel." Admiral Kethver studied the images on his screen. The smaller ship was clearly primitive compared to ancient technology, built with basic metals and simple fusion engines. But the beings inside looked exactly like the descriptions of ancients from his people's oldest records. "Could these creatures be servants of the ancients?" suggested his tactical officer. "Perhaps the ancients created them to operate their lesser technologies." The admiral's scales shifted to the deep purple of uncertainty. According to Zephyrian legend, the ancients had been tall, pale beings with only 2 arms and strange hair. that came in many colors. The creatures on the screens matched that description perfectly, but their technology seemed far too primitive for the godlike ancients of legend. "Open a communication channel," the Admiral ordered. "We will attempt to speak with these beings and learn their purpose here." Back aboard the Aurora, Chief Engineer Lisa Park was making discoveries of her own. She had been analyzing the station's power systems and found something that changed everything she thought she knew about advanced technology. "Jake, Elena, you need to see this," Lisa called from the engine room. "I've figured out how the station generates so much power." Jake and Elena joined Lisa at her workstation, where she had connected the Aurora's computers to the station's power grid. The display showed energy flowing through systems that were incredibly advanced, but built on principles that Lisa recognized. "It's fusion power," Lisa explained, "but not like anything we've built before. They're using controlled fusion reactions at the molecular level, generating massive amounts of energy from tiny amounts of matter. The technology is thousands of years ahead of ours, but it's still based on the same physics we use." Elena felt another piece of the puzzle clicking into place. "Lisa, could humans have developed this technology 15,000 years ago?" "Not the humans who stayed on Earth," Lisa replied. "But if a group of humans had access to resources and time that Earthbound humans didn't have, yes, it's possible. The mathematical principles are all there. They just found ways to apply them that we haven't discovered yet." Dr. Sam Tucker made another breakthrough that afternoon. While analyzing biological samples from the station, he found something that proved their theory beyond any doubt. Mixed in with the ancient materials were traces of DNA that were unmistakably human. "Elena, Jake, Lisa," Sam called excitedly. "I've got genetic evidence. The DNA samples from the station are human. Not similar to human, not evolved from human, but actual human DNA, the same species that's sitting in this room right now." Jake felt the weight of discovery settling on his shoulders. "So the ancient humans were the same as modern humans?" "Genetically identical," Sam confirmed. "Whatever happened 15,000 years ago, a group of humans with Earth DNA built this station and spread across the galaxy. They're not our distant cousins or evolutionary ancestors. They're us." Elena stared out the viewing port at the ancient station, seeing it with completely new eyes. "The Ice Age," she said quietly. "What?" Jake asked. "The last ice age on Earth. Ended about 15,000 years ago," Elena explained. "What if some humans had developed advanced technology and left Earth before the climate disaster? What if they spread across the galaxy while the rest of humanity struggled to survive on a frozen planet?" Lisa nodded slowly. "That would explain everything. Advanced humans leave Earth, establish stations and colonies throughout the galaxy. Then something happens to make them disappear. The Earthbound humans eventually develop space travel independently, thousands of years later." Sam pulled up star charts showing the distribution of the energy signals they had detected. "Look at this pattern. If ancient humans were spreading from Earth, this is exactly the route they would take. Following the spiral arm of the galaxy, establishing stations at regular intervals." Jake studied the charts and felt a chill of realization. If ancient humans spread throughout the galaxy, then every alien species out there has probably encountered them at some point. The legends, the stories about godlike ancients. "They're all about us," Elena finished, "about humans." The implications were staggering. Every alien civilization in the galaxy had stories about the mysterious ancients who possessed incredible technology and then vanished without explanation. If those ancients were actually ancient humans, then humanity wasn't a newcomer to galactic civilization. They were its founders, but that also meant that the massive alien fleets now approaching their position weren't coming to greet fellow explorers. They were coming to confront the return of beings they had feared and worshipped for thousands of years. "Jake," Lisa said, monitoring their sensors, "those alien fleets are getting closer. Based on their approach vectors, they'll be here in less than 6 hours." Jake made a decision that would determine the fate of human-alien relations for generations to come. "We're not running. If ancient humans established peaceful contact with these species before, then modern humans can do it again. But first, we need to understand exactly what our ancestors did out here. Elena turned back to her analysis of the station's databanks. Then we'd better work fast. If we're going to meet these aliens as the descendants of their legendary ancients, we need to know what that really means. As the Aurora's crew raced to uncover the truth about humanity's ancient expansion into space, alien fleets converged on their position from across the galaxy. The greatest military forces ever assembled were preparing for a confrontation with beings they believed to be returning gods, while 4 humans worked desperately to understand their own species. Admiral Kethver watched his fleet's sensor readings with growing confusion. The massive ancient station hung in space before them, its blue lights pulsing with the same rhythm described in the oldest Zephyrian texts. But docked alongside it was a small, primitive vessel that looked nothing like the legendary ships of the ancients. "Admiral, we're receiving a communication signal from the smaller vessel," reported his communications officer, her scales flickering with nervous energy. "Put it through," the Admiral commanded. Though his 4 hands remained ready at his weapon controls, Captain Jake Morrison's voice came through the ship's speakers, speaking in clear, simple words that the Zephyrian translation computers could easily understand. "This is Captain Morrison of the human research vessel Aurora. We come in peace and wish to establish diplomatic contact." Admiral Kethver stared at the communication panel. The voice matched perfectly with ancient Zephyrian descriptions of how the ancients spoke. The language patterns, the tone, even the choice of words were exactly what the old stories described. "This is Admiral Kethver of the Zephyrian Empire," he replied carefully. "State your purpose at this ancient station." Jake looked at Elena and Sam, all of them realizing that this moment would determine the future of human-alien relations. "We are explorers and scientists studying the technology left behind by our ancestors." The word ancestors sent shock waves through the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Kethver felt his scales turn the pale white of deep fear. If these beings claimed the ancients as ancestors, then they were either the children of gods or the gods themselves returned in new forms. "Your ancestors?" the Admiral asked. His voice carefully controlled. Dr. Elena Rodriguez took over the communication. "Admiral, we have made discoveries that suggest the beings you call the ancients were members of our species who explored this galaxy thousands of years ago. We believe there has been a great misunderstanding on the planet Zarian." Prime High Counselor Vextar listened to the conversation through the fleet's communication relay. The words struck him like lightning. For weeks, he had been studying the oldest texts in the Zephyrian archives, trying to understand what the return of the ancients might mean for his people. The ancient records described the ancients as teachers and explorers, not conquerors. They had shown early Zephyrian tribes how to grow food more efficiently, how to work with metals, and how to build structures that could withstand earthquakes. When they departed during the Great Silence, they had left behind gifts of knowledge and tools to help Zephyrian civilization grow. Admiral High Counselor Vextar's voice came through the communication system. "I am ordering you to establish peaceful contact with these beings. Do not take any hostile action until we understand their true nature." Admiral Kethver acknowledged the order, though every instinct told him to be cautious. "Human vessel Aurora, we request permission to send a diplomatic party to meet with you. We wish to understand your connection to the ancients." Jake looked at his crew, seeing the same mixture of excitement and fear in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. "Permission granted, Admiral. We welcome the opportunity to speak with you." Chief Engineer Lisa Park had been working frantically to restore more of the ancient station systems. As the diplomatic negotiations continued, she made another breakthrough that would change everything. "Elena, Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called from her workstation. "I've managed to activate the station's main communication array." Elena and Dr. Sam Tucker joined Lisa at the newly activated control panel. The display showed a map of the entire galaxy, with thousands of points of light scattered across the spiral arms. "What are we looking at?" Elena asked. "It's a network," Lisa explained, her voice filled with awe. The ancient humans built communication stations throughout the galaxy. This station was just one node in a massive network that connected hundreds of worlds. Sam studied the display and felt his understanding of ancient human civilization expanding rapidly. Look at the pattern. They didn't just visit random worlds. They followed a systematic plan, establishing stations at strategic points that could maintain contact across vast distances. Elena realized the implications immediately. If the ancient humans built this network, then every alien species in the galaxy probably encountered them at some point. They weren't just explorers, they were the first galactic civilization. If responding to Elena's words, the station's communication array suddenly activated, sending signals across the galaxy to every other node in the ancient network. For the first time in thousands of years, the network was awakening. Across the galaxy, alien civilizations detected the activation of ancient installations on their worlds. On the crystalline hegemony's home planet, massive crystal formations that had been dormant for millennia began glowing with inner light. In void collective space, energy fields that had been stable for generations started pulsing with new patterns. Every species recognized these activations as signs that the ancient network was coming back to life. But only the humans aboard the Aurora understood what it really meant. Their ancestors had left behind a galaxy-spanning communication system that was now responding to their presence. Admiral Kethver made his decision. Prepare a shuttle. I will personally meet with these beings who claim connection to the ancients. 2 hours later, Admiral Kethver and a small diplomatic party boarded their shuttle and approached the ancient station. As they drew closer, the Admiral could see the human vessel more clearly. It was definitely primitive compared to ancient technology, but it followed design principles that looked familiar. Admiral, his pilot reported, the smaller vessel's design matches several elements described in our oldest technical records. The fusion engine configuration, the hull design, even the placement of the sensor arrays. Admiral Kethver felt a chill of recognition. The ancient texts described how the ancients had taught Zephyrian engineers to build their first spacecraft. If the human vessel used similar designs, it suggested a connection that went far deeper than mere coincidence. The shuttle docked with the ancient station, and Admiral Kethver stepped through the airlock to meet the beings who claimed the ancients as ancestors. The moment he saw Captain Jake Morrison face to face, the Admiral knew that the ancient legends were true. Jake stood nearly 2 meters tall, with pale skin and brown hair that matched perfectly with ancient Zephyrian artwork depicting the ancients. His 2 arms and 2 legs, his facial structure, even the way he moved through the station's corridors were exactly as the old stories described. Admiral Kethver, Jake said, extending his hand in the ancient gesture of greeting that Zephyrian children still learned in school. Welcome aboard. The Admiral stared at the offered hand, remembering the stories his grandmother had told him about how the ancients had taught that gesture to his people as a sign of peace and friendship. Slowly, he reached out with one of his 4 arms and grasped Jake's hand. You truly are them, the Admiral whispered. You are the ancients returned. Elena stepped forward, carrying a tablet filled with their research data. Admiral, we're not gods or returning conquerors. We're explorers just like our ancestors were. We believe the beings you call ancients were humans who left Earth during a great climate disaster 15,000 years ago. She showed the Admiral the genetic evidence, the linguistic analysis, and the technical specifications that proved the connection between ancient and modern humans. As the evidence mounted, Admiral Kethver felt his worldview shifting. Your ancestors, the Admiral said slowly, they taught my people many things: agriculture, metallurgy, engineering. They helped us become the civilization we are today. Sam nodded enthusiastically. That's exactly what we've discovered. The ancient humans weren't conquerors or gods. They were teachers and explorers who wanted to help other species develop and grow. High Counselor Vexstar S. voice came through the communication system, carrying across space from Zarian Prime. Admiral, I have been studying our oldest archives. The texts speak of the ancients not as rulers but as friends who shared their knowledge freely before departing on a great journey to seek others of their kind. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she understood the full scope of what their ancestors had accomplished. They were looking for us. The ancient humans left Earth to find other humans who might have survived, but they helped everyone they met along the way. Jake looked around at the station that his ancestors had built, thinking about the network of communication nodes that connected hundreds of worlds. They didn't just explore the galaxy. They planted the seeds of civilization everywhere they went. Admiral Kethver felt his scales shift to the warm gold of joy and understanding. And now their children have returned to continue their work. As news of the revelation spread across the galaxy through the reactivated ancient network, alien species everywhere began to reconsider their legends and stories. The beings they had feared as returning conquerors were actually the descendants of their oldest teachers and friends, but the greatest discovery was yet to come. Hidden in the deepest archives of the ancient station, waiting to reveal the true reason why the original humans had left the galaxy so long ago. High Counselor Vexstar arrived at the ancient station 3 days later, bringing with him the most precious treasures of Zephyrian civilization, the sacred archives. These ancient texts, carved on metal plates that had survived for 15,000 years, contained the oldest stories his people possessed about the mysterious ancients. Captain Jake Morrison and Dr. Elena Rodriguez met the High Counselor in the station's main hall, a vast chamber filled with glowing symbols and star charts that covered every wall. Admiral Kethver stood beside them, his scales showing the calm blue of peaceful cooperation. "These are the original records of our first contact with your ancestors," High Counselor Vexstar said, carefully placing the metal plates on a table that seemed designed exactly for such documents. "Perhaps together we can understand the full truth of what happened so long ago." Elena studied the ancient Zephyrian writing, which their computers could now translate thanks to the linguistic databases they had found in the station. The stories were beautiful and detailed, describing the arrival of tall, pale beings who came from the direction of a small yellow star. "Listen to this," Elena said, reading from one of the plates. "The sky teachers came to us in ships that moved like shooting stars. They showed us how to make tools from metal and how to grow food in dry ground. When we asked why they helped us, they said they hoped that someday, when their own people were ready, we could help them in return." Jake felt a deep sense of pride in his ancient ancestors. They weren't just exploring. They were building friendships across the galaxy. Chief Engineer Lisa Park had been working with Zephyrian technicians to fully restore the station's ancient systems. Her breakthrough came when she managed to activate what appeared to be the station's main historical archive. The massive computer system contained records going back to the very beginning of ancient human expansion into space. "Elena, Jake, everyone, you need to come see this," Lisa called from the archive chamber. "I found something incredible." The group gathered around a large display screen as Lisa accessed files that had been locked away for millennia. The screen filled with images of Earth as it had been 15,000 years ago, showing vast ice sheets covering most of the northern continents. "This is the record of why the ancient humans left Earth," Lisa explained. "It wasn't just the Ice Age. Look at these astronomical readings." The display showed charts of the solar system, focusing on an asteroid that was approaching Earth's orbit. The calculations were clear. The asteroid would pass close enough to Earth to cause massive climate disruption, possibly ending human civilization entirely. Dr. Sam Tucker studied the data with growing understanding. They knew the asteroid was coming. The ancient humans had advanced enough astronomy to predict the disaster years in advance. Elena read the accompanying text, her voice filled with emotion. "It says here that they built a fleet of ships to carry human civilization to safety among the stars. But they could only save a small number of people. The rest had to stay behind and hope they could survive what was coming." High Counselor Vexstar felt his scales shift to the deep purple of sorrow. So the ancients were refugees, fleeing a dying world to preserve their species. "But they didn't just run away," Jake added. Reading more of the records? Look at this. They planned to establish colonies throughout the galaxy, then return to help Earth recover when the disaster was over. The archive revealed the full scope of ancient humanity's plan. They had intended to spread across the galaxy, establish advanced civilizations, and develop technology that could help restore Earth's damaged climate. The plan was ambitious beyond anything modern humans had ever attempted. Lisa accessed another section of the archive and found something that changed everything they thought they knew about the ancient humans' departure. Elena, look at this. They didn't just leave the galaxy, they found something. The screen showed star charts that extended far beyond their own galaxy, pointing toward distant clusters of stars that were barely visible even with the most advanced telescopes. The ancient humans had detected signals from these distant galaxies, signals that suggested other human colonies might exist there. They left to find other survivors, Elena realized. Earth wasn't the only world that faced disasters. The ancient humans discovered that other groups of humans had spread to different galaxies, and they went to find them. Sam found the final piece of the puzzle in a personal message recorded by the ancient humans' leader. The message was addressed to any future humans who might discover the station, and it had been waiting 15,000 years for someone to hear it. "This is Commander Kate Sullivan of the Earth Colonial Fleet," the recorded voice said in an ancient form of English that the station's computers translated for the modern listeners. "If you are hearing this message, then our mission has succeeded, and humanity has survived on Earth long enough to reach the stars again." Jake felt tears in his eyes as he listened to the voice of his distant ancestor speaking across the centuries. The message continued. "We have established stations throughout this galaxy to help the species we have met develop their own civilizations. We hope that when our Earth descendants are ready to explore space, they will find friends and allies waiting for them. We are departing now to search for other human colonies that may exist beyond this galaxy. We will return when we have found them all and brought them home." Elena realized the profound truth behind the ancient humans' actions. They weren't abandoning Earth or running away from responsibility. They were trying to reunite the entire human species across multiple galaxies. High Counselor Vexstar stepped forward, his scales showing the gold of deep respect. "The ancients spoke truth when they said they would return. You are their children, coming home to continue their work." Admiral Keffer activated his fleet's communication system, broadcasting to every Zephyrian ship in the area. "All vessels stand down. These are not conquerors or returning gods. They are the children of our oldest teachers, returning home after a long journey." Similar messages spread across the galaxy as alien species everywhere realized that the return of the ancients was not a threat, but a homecoming. The crystalline hegemony sent messages of welcome. The Void Collective offered to share their knowledge of interdimensional travel. Dozens of other species that had been preparing for war began preparing for celebration instead. Elena accessed the station's long-range communication system and sent a message back to Earth, knowing it would take years to arrive but needing to share their discovery with all of humanity. "Earth Control, this is Dr. Elena Rodriguez reporting from the ancient human station in the Kepler system. We have discovered that humanity's destiny among the stars began 15,000 years ago. Our ancestors didn't just explore this galaxy. They built the foundation for everything we're discovering today. We are not alone in the universe, and we never were. We are coming home to friends our ancestors made for us." Jake stood at the station's main viewing port looking out at the fleet of alien ships that surrounded them. Ships that belonged to species his ancestors had helped and taught, species that were now ready to welcome modern humanity as family rather than strangers. "What do we do now?" Sam asked, overwhelmed by the scope of their discovery. Elena smiled as she watched human and alien technicians working together to restore more of the ancient network. "We do what our ancestors always did. We explore, we learn, and we help others along the way." Lisa had found references in the archives to other human colonies that might still exist in distant galaxies. According to these records, there could Be hundreds of human civilizations scattered across the universe. The ancient humans were trying to find them all. Jake made a decision that would shape humanity's future among the stars. Then that's our mission too. We'll work with our alien friends to restore the ancient network, and we'll use it to search for the rest of our species. High Counselor Vexstar placed one of his 4 hands on Jake's shoulder in a gesture of friendship that his people had learned from the ancient humans. The Zephyrian Empire will help you in this quest. It is time for the children of the ancients to complete their ancestors' mission. As word spread throughout the galaxy, species that had feared the return of the ancients for thousands of years began preparing to join the greatest exploration mission in galactic history. They would search beyond their own galaxy for the ancient humans who had departed so long ago, and for any other human colonies that might be waiting to come home. The station's ancient systems hummed with new purpose, as human and alien scientists worked together to extend the communication network beyond the galaxy's edge. After 15,000 years of separation, the children of Earth were finally ready to reunite with their scattered family among the stars. Elena looked at the star charts showing the vast distances they would need to cross and felt no fear, only excitement. Humanity had spent 15,000 years learning to explore space, and now they had friends and allies ready to help them explore the universe itself. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic family had begun.